So I wanted to show you what I'm doing right now. I don't know how many of you know this, but for the last 30 years, Health Canada and their best epidemiologists have predicted that HIV and AIDS would become an epidemic among Indigenous people, Aboriginal people, Native American people. This is one of the workshops that I did back in October 15th, 1990. So that would have been 27 years ago. And Sioux Lookout, Ontario, obviously is a community that probably still needs HIV and AIDS. And this is a VHS. I don't know how many people have been back into that community. This one is from Selkirk First Nations, another community that is struggling and has been struggling with HIV and AIDS. 2004, Kelly Crossing, so that's in the Yukon. And why I'm doing this is there's been a huge loss in our AIDS resources. All of the AIDS service organizations that had been funded up until now are gone. So all their resources that they developed have literally just been lost in the wind. And, you know, there's a huge need out there for them because communities, provinces like Saskatchewan are now, you know, they're struggling with very basic information like disclosure. How do you disclose to your family? And they need to have support for this. So I'm now digging up, you know, all of these old documents that I have, different strategies that have been created through the years by Aboriginal communities. And this is really important because I hate to say that, you know, if maybe I wasn't a hoarder, who remembers this initiative, In the Hands of Women? Like, this could say a lot right now about the type of work that we need to do. This is from Alex Archie's time when we did the first and only national Aboriginal AIDS gathering in Canada, and all of we had these panels made out, and when Healing Our Spirit closed, all of these went missing. We don't know where they are. We need those panels back. And I'm looking at basic old notes that I've taken, you know, through the years. This is from September 9th. You know, I'm sitting at the Marriott Edmonton, and there are people, Lorraine Cardinal, who is a, you know, community health nurse, like Betty Smith, Stan Houston, talking about, you know, these different, we're talking about Red Deer not having any support, and there's still no support there. And this was in '09, and I guess you can kind of hear it in my voice. There's an urgency, you know, there's an urgency again, and I don't think that people see it. You know, until your life is touched by this horrible disease, you don't respond. You don't get it. It doesn't mean anything to you, you know, and we need to be past this. This is an epidemic like smallpox, people. Shasta woman, who remembers her? Evan Adams, national role model. Well, he's not doing much for HIV and AIDS these days since he's become a physician. You, Me, and Reality, youth negotiating the barriers to safer sex. This was done in Youth Co. I was part of Youth Co. But, you know, unfortunately, as people get older and newbies kind of take the reins, they kind of forget where a lot of these initiatives and resources came. That's one I highly recommend, just to decolonize your brain. Rewind, fast forward. Oh, awesome. Boy, oh boy, I've got all kinds of videos in here. You guys have no idea. Like her giveaway, A Spiritual Journey with AIDS. How many of you have heard of that? I bet none of you. Some of you old timers, yeah. You newbies, nope. And when I mean newbie, I'm talking like in the last 20 years. Speaking for Native Youth, Worker Training Program, June 27th, 1996. I was part of that. This is my CV, you guys. I'm just going to say that, you know, when this epidemic first came out, we didn't even think we were going to live. Manitoba Aboriginal AIDS Conference, 1992. So, American Indians Against HIV and AIDS Leadership Project. So let me show you the brother or sister to that. Oh, I turned my tea off. Yeah, this just got me going today, you guys. Why? Because we don't have anywhere to send people now who are living with HIV. We have nowhere for them to go. We're not even able to send them out the door with a resource or a pamphlet anymore. Like, that's pretty sad. And, you know, I don't know whose brilliant idea it was to stop making pamphlets, but that was the wrong choice. Because without these resources, how are we supposed to even educate people? This is one of the books. So these are other resources put out. Aboriginal Youth, Hand in Hand in the Fight Against HIV. My daughter was part of this project. Honor Your Love, Protect Your Sex. These are all from Katie. I don't even know if that exists anymore. This is a wonderful book. The Gathering Tree needs to be out there, but you know, this is the other part of it. Are these barriers, these financial barriers and gatekeepers to some of this information, and it needs to be out there now. What I was going to show you was, you know, the American AIDS community was a lot more forward thinking than we are, because they had the Ryan White Foundation. We didn't have a little boy as a poster child, a mainstream white boy who was victimized by stigma, by being refused to go to school. And we didn't have him, and we didn't have a government that wanted to fully engage and prevent this disease. And we hear about the disparities of different, you know, groups, but ultimately in the United States, HIV is treated the same across the board. You know, ultimately, yes, like I said, there are huge gaps, but there's a lot more stability in a lot of their HIV programming. Anyways, back to my crazy box here. Anyways, you know, I don't know. I'm going to need help with this, because I don't know how we need to get this into our communities again. This is, I'm tired of talking heads. I'm tired of hearing about how PHAC won't fund us properly, never gets us money in time, and then half the time, half the shit that people say they're going to do in those projects never get done because they end up having to make up a bunch of stuff to prove they've done something. I just can't even speak about that funding. So it's really in our hands, I think, to start making these changes. And I just needed to speak up about it today because it's been bothering me a lot, especially since I came back from Cannes AGM. The disparity. Check this out. We've got a sister who was invited by one organization, and then she was told to get sponsored by another organization. Well, the organization that sponsored her, I'm just going to say straight up front, plays games and doesn't really, they're just not ethical, safe people. So what they did is they gave her the smallest amount of money they could, despite the fact that she has children and pets at home. And then they got her stuck somewhere. I happened to be at the conference, but I couldn't do anything for my sister because I didn't even know that she was stuck. Had I known, I would have taken care of it. And I ended up having to, my mother and I, an elder and I, actually had to, unfortunately, well, we were happy to do it. I'm sorry. Instead of making this woman go and chase the same people around who screwed her up, instead of making her go around and get re-victimized, it's like, no. Here's the money. Do what you got to do. And honestly, you know what? It wasn't even about the money. It's the principle. I just see this disparity, and it hurts the heart more than anything because these are our own people, that are doing this to us, and it has to stop somewhere. But on the other side of it, this woman is beginning to see how people use her and actually are not very sincere in how they say they care. And, one woman waking up is worth all of the trips that I could make anywhere and all of the time that I've spent, doing loosely what's called peer support. So maybe through all my complaining, bitching, and all the lunacy that I keep claiming, hopefully it reaches somebody's heart and people are beginning to see that we need a lot more than is being given to us by these people who take government funding. Anyways, guys, as you can see, I'm knee deep in resources. I have to now get money, which I will on my own, because I don't sit around and wait for people to do stuff for me. I will go and get these made into a DVD format, or I will find a way to get them distributed or accessible to people, because you have to. If I don't do that, then I'm not any better than somebody who is sitting there collecting a paycheck and saying I'm supporting people when I don't. So, yeah. Thanks for listening, you guys. I really appreciate it. Bye.